So thanks to Startup Saturdays to give me this opportunity to talk about passion of mine, which is cybersecurity. So I'll just give you a little bit of introduction about myself. Um, I was born in Vizag, but I grew up in Hyderabad, so don't hold it against me. I went to I worked in Hyderabad for a couple of years, and then pursued my master's in SUNY Binghamton. So it's State University of New York in upstate New York, and I worked for several companies. And later on, I saw one area that was being neglected, which is cybersecurity. Usually, it's an afterthought just before the release. People would talk about it or think about it. So what I realized was, okay, if you could automate certain functions, especially when it comes to compliances, I felt like it could be a useful tool. And that's where the seed of iCompass started, and that's how I started this organization. And in 2019, so it's been a few years, and we have been on the journey of startup, and it's been actually really good and fun, and also hard as startups go. But as I was kind of doing this in US, and we are based out of California, and we do have a office in India, but I realized that I was not catering to the Indian market, and I started digging into more about what's going on, and that's what I wanted to actually share with you guys today. So I see that the GDP growth, and this is actually the source is printed right down there. You see that most countries in the world are not growing at this pace, and even China is the only other country, but even that is actually slowing, and their growth rates have been actually comparably less than India. And even in a lean year like 2023, we are expected to grow at 7%, which is actually huge because most countries are actually going to contract their, they're actually going to be negative, obviously, in terms of the GDP growth. So we see that that's actually growing. That's good for India. And then UPI, which I did not know a lot about maybe 6-8 months ago, and I started learning about this. And what I see here is the kind of growth it's taken on. I mean, 12.8 lakh crore transactions, worth of transactions in just 1 month in 2022. That is amazing to me, and I felt like if this amount of transactions are happening, obviously this is and the number of companies that are being started have also grown exponentially, and you see that there are now 1.6 lakh companies being started every year in India. So what that also means is that we are storing a lot of financial, healthcare, and personally identifiable information online. When data starts getting stored online, the companies who are doing it have a responsibility to make sure that you are taking all the precautions, you're encrypting your data, you're making sure the data in transit is also secure, and there's a lot of different aspects of security that you should be doing. Not everyone is aware of these and know how to do it, so that's kind of where we come in, but we'll talk about that later. It also kind of paints a huge target on our back because with all of this happening, with this kind of growth happening, already India is number 2 in terms of the target of all the hackers. So the amount of attacks that are happening, probably after US, it's India is getting the most number of attacks. And that is no coincidence because we are growing, and not only we are growing, our digital presence has immensely taken off, especially after phone pay type things that we are doing going like in the last few years. So the industries that usually get impacted a lot due to hackers and data breaches and ransomware is healthcare. Starting with healthcare because that has the most valuable data. We don't realize it, but a lot of our health information, personal information is being stored there. And not only that, a lot of this data is being used for your insurance premium calculations and all things like that. So then obviously the financial sector, because this is where your have your credit card info or the information about let's say if you have crypto coins or whatever else that you're storing from a financial standpoint. So those industries are going to be targeted more as well. They are being targeted a lot more as well. And um, as you can see, these numbers are actually in millions. So this is the amount of impact on an average that happens. So if you're in a healthcare industry, you're paying up to $10 million in losses. You're incurring that much loss. If you're a financial industry, that's usually 5.9 or about 6. So if you go down the kind of list, as you can see, no industry is kind of outside the realm of attack, because anything that's valuable that's being stored, it's going to be targeted. So having a breach uh, a lot of times cannot be avoided, because you're not going to be running faster than the hackers who have all the time in the world. You have a lot more things to do than what the hacker has. Hacker has to just get in. So the worst thing is not just the getting breached part, is the time actually you're detecting. So even identifying that you have a breach is a big issue. So as you can see here, the trends have actually not gotten better. We would assume that over a period of time, that as you can see from 2016 to 2022, the average time that you're able to identify and contain a breach has only gone up. And that is actually a shame, because we are getting more sophisticated, but the hackers are getting more sophisticated when it comes to actually covering their tracks and making sure that they are not getting detected. So if you can imagine, let's say you are thinking that your infrastructure, everything is safe, but some hacker has already access to your info and your servers, and you just don't know it. And a lot of times that knowledge comes later, because you start seeing some discrepancies and stuff like that, and doesn't happen overnight, and this is not going to be something that you will be able to kind of navigate that easily. So again, you should be relying on certain tools and understanding this area for you to be able to move forward. So another thing I want to talk about is exposed attack surfaces. What does that mean? So anything that is public facing, and it is a point of entry for your hackers. So they are always looking to find things. So let's say you have some servers. I don't know how many people are familiar with AWS, but let's say if you have an S3 bucket open to the public and things like that. So you are exposing things to public, and the hackers whole job, and they can look at your DNS, they can look at aspects of your business, and they can find a lot of the information through that, and they can start attacking them. So the thing is, if you don't know which attack surfaces are exposed, it's like you're sitting on a time bomb. You don't know when it's going to explode, you have no idea, but it is. So you better get a handle on it. You better find out all your exposed public endpoints are, and make sure that you're actually securing them properly. Okay, so what are the different types of attacks that could happen? So again, this is kind of heavy. This is a lot of information I'm trying to throw at you guys, but just bear with me, because this is going to be useful, right? So if you're running businesses, if you have, again, if you are part of a business, even from if you are a non-technical person, these are important information for you to understand, because this kind of becomes the basis for how you have a good strategy for your business, so in order for you to protect yourself from these type of attacks. So a lot of times this is underrated, but happens a lot. A stolen or compromised credentials. So this happens often enough. That's actually your top attack vector. And then you have a business email compromise. So this happens multiple ways, but and usually phishing is involved in that as well. But if your business email gets compromised, then that becomes a basis for again, intrusion into your system, and then they can get access to all your data. They can get access to your servers, your IP. You lose a lot once the intrusion happens. And you have phishing, and a vulnerability in third party software. This has actually increased in the last, I would say, past few months. So you need to take control of your third parties and vendors that you're onboarding as well. So there's a concept called vendor risk assessment, which is whenever you're onboarding someone, you want to make sure that they are actually following the right kind of industry practices that are required for them to keep their data safe, as well as, because you might be sending them data that they have to store on their side, and you cannot have them, having a very shoddy security practice. So you want to take care of that as well. So all of these attack vectors, and we'll make the PowerPoint presentation available to you guys who is interested. But these are many attack vectors that are being used today in order to get into your systems, get access to your data. So that's how that works. So, and I want to highlight phishing and ransomware is one of the biggest nuisances when it comes to cybersecurity. So phishing, as you know, it could happen through your email, it could happen to your phone. Someone might send a link that might seem innocuous. It might seem it's coming from a trusted source like a bank. Most typically nowadays, no bank is going to send you a link. So you should always remember not to click on links coming in your SMSs or WhatsApps or on your basically emails, especially if you don't think you can trust them. So phishing is a kind of a big one that's actually helping people get in. So and this is to do with, because there are technical and non-technical people obviously that make up the company. Everyone needs to kind of be aware. So there are obviously security awareness trainings that happen, but you need to make sure, because typically the weakest link is not your system, it's people's practices, right? You just get used to being or doing certain things certain way, and that's why it's kind of critical to focus on that. But then ransomware has become such a nuisance across the globe, where people take over your system, they encrypt all your data, and they start demanding money. And there are ways to getting around this, but obviously at that point you have been compromised in a pretty bad way. So they have had access to be able to encrypt your data. That means there are admin level access to your systems. So that should not have happened, and if that has happened, that definitely doesn't sound good for your organization, and you end up not only paying them a lot of money to get them to unencrypt, but also you end up losing your reputation, because obviously you have not been able to do your job securing your data. So as I mentioned before, the financial loss on an average when a data breach happens is around 9 million. A lot of companies cannot sustain for that kind of a loss. So a lot of them, that leads to bankruptcies, right? Like typically you'll not be able to kind of sustain that sort of that's kind of big loss, because it's not just a financial loss, it's also reputational damage. So now let's think about, okay, fine, let's get cybersecurity done. Like, what's the big deal in that? So I'll show you why it's a big deal, because these are all the topics that we have built this taxonomy of what our cybersecurity topics are going to look like. Meaning, someone who's in the field and who's actually doing who's actually learning and doing some work in this has to deal with usually a segment of it. And if you're a CISO, or a Chief Information Security Officer for a company, you're expected to have knowledge around all of this and need to know how to navigate through these topics. And you have to tailor your business needs for these topics. So not everything is going to be applicable to you, but you need to know how to find which topics are relevant and make sure that you are actually implementing those practices. So obviously the reason why people cannot just go and navigate on their own or do it on their own is because it's a pretty complex area, and it's a huge set of topics that you're dealing with. And then if you think you can just find one tool that's going to solve all your problems, that's also not going to work, right? So as you can see, this is an ecosystem of the different topics that I talked about, but under which these are all the different tools that are available. So why are there so many tools, right? I mean, why do you have to have like 50 or 60 tools, let's say doing vulnerability assessment, for example? The reason is that they all cater to different sizes of companies. And not only that, obviously the feature set is not going to be exactly the same. So you need to find the one that is the right fit for your company and if your company's size. So that's very critical, that a lot of people don't know how, and they actually sometimes overpay for something that they didn't have to. They should be, again, this is where intelligence or a person comes into play. Not everything can be solved by a tool. Tool is there to make things efficient and easily operational for you, but a person has to make decisions on trade-offs and how you could do things for the right fit for your company and for your team. So I believe that we have an opportunity not just to help, let's say, India, for example, and the ecosystem and the startups here, but also the entire world, because we have the right demographics. So we are one of the youngest on an average youngest people living in a country, and China is scrambling. They want to, now they're losing their policy of one child. Now there's two child policy, but they're trying to loosen that as well, because they realize that because of the demographic decline that they're seeing, they won't be able to manage and have a good healthy kind of future without the basically young population there to kind of help get us through the next few years. So India has a big advantage there, and because again there's no dearth of IT talent, but we have to train them properly, right? There are, the cybersecurity side is a very lucrative, and also the one of the areas with the maximum amount of crunch in terms of talent. So I believe by addressing that and training more people and certifying more people here in India, that's going to really help not only India but also the entire global need that's there. Okay. So I believe I'll give you an example of how some countries skipped laying the phone lines, landlines, and directly went to cell phones. And that was a leapfrog that was possible because the cell phones technology was available to them before the landline could be implemented. So I believe that we are that kind of place where if we embrace automation, we could actually leapfrog areas that we don't have to do and get to the better place right now rather than few years in the future. So we can then leapfrog US and Australia and Europe when it comes to kind of being at the cutting edge of cybersecurity. So I have to plug my company and our product called Csobot.ai. So we actually help companies of all sizes, and actually we are focused mostly on mid to just a little bit bigger companies, not enterprise level as much, because we believe there are a huge number of companies who need help but they cannot afford it. We want to make it affordable for them to use a cybersecurity tool to help them out. What we do, again, as I said, it's an ecosystem. We don't solve all the problems, but we want to help get you the right answers. So the first thing is visibility into your infrastructure and knowing what your attack surfaces are. That is really critical, and we help you do that. This is a screenshot of how it will look when you run it. And then we also tailor your, again, cybersecurity strategy for you. So this is where you will see the taxonomy that I was showing you before, we actually have it a multi-layered taxonomy as well. And this is an interactive graph. You can go in, you can put your statuses and actually manage your cybersecurity through here rather than in an Excel sheet or someplace that's not easily for you to navigate through. So we also do compliance automation. So we actually started with compliance as our focus. So when I say compliance, I'm talking about SOC 1, SOC 2, HIPAA, ISO 27001, PCI, that sort of thing. So we have actually written our automation to map to the controls of all of these compliances, and we are helping companies get their compliance certification done quickly. So that's kind of our, one of our key feature set that we have. And this is one of the reports, a compliance readiness report looks like. And again, we do continuous monitoring and alerting because we want you to keep on top of things and make sure that you do what is needed when it's needed. So that's it from me. Thanks for your time, and I'm here to answer any questions that you might have. So feel free to ask anything about cybersecurity. I'll do my best to help answer. Yeah, sure. You can. Yeah, no worries.
My name is Jay.
Hi, Jay.
Yeah. My question is, I think my computer person written.
Okay.
My question is, the best metric I think for a security check is not being visible.
Sure.
You are doing a good job.
Sure.
Means that you're not visible or you're not.
Okay. The tool you
So,
mean, or
sorry?
the tool not being visible, or
Or it's running smoothly means
sure.
it is not like a detective
Uh-huh.
analogy.
Yeah.
So how do you make your presence felt to a company, to an organization?
Right. So what we realize is there's a lot of it is education, right? So first thing, a tool running smoothly, right?
Yeah.
That's what you're talking
It's a
about.
good job.
Yeah. It's doing such a good job that we don't feel like, oh, there's something running. Like, if there's good AC running, we are like, okay, we are feeling comfortable, but we're not thinking there's a good AC running.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I get it. So in our case, what that means is that, let's say for a company, there needs to be a security team who's getting all the alerts and stuff that they're managing all that, and the business doesn't feel the impact of like, oh, I need to think about security for this now. No. That's been done for you somewhere, so you can keep continuing. So the guidelines and the guardrails have been set up for you, so you can work within that, and then you feel like you're focused on the customer, the business, growing that. So uh, for us, that's the ideal scenario. That's what we want to get to. Is we want to help you set it up so that you are the visibility I'm talking about is for yourself. You should be invisible to the attackers, right? Or invisible for others, but internally, you want the maximum visibility. The right kind of team members and the people should have maximum visibility into your infrastructure and what are your attack surfaces, all of that stuff. If you have the visibility, then you're able to kind of do a good job. Otherwise, you're not able to kind of even like plan when something happens, right? So you won't have a different strategy. You'll only be able to just kind of have to keep searching or hunting for it, and that could be costly for the company. So yeah, cool. Yeah. So I also have references for the things if you want to see that. Yeah, sorry, guys.
Hello, Kiran.
Hi, hello.
You talked about the talent crunch.
Yes.
So what kind of crunch you are seeing, and any companies here who are trying to overcome that, other training kind of a thing?
Sure. I'll plug one other thing that we are doing as well. It's called Wanna Practice. So we help aspiring uh, analysts who want to get into the leadership role of which is chief security officer, or basically kind of senior security analyst type role. There's CISSP, CCSP, CISM, CCSK. There are like a bunch of these acronyms, but these are all certifications, right? You could do, and there are for entry levels there are separate ones. So Wanna Practice, we actually help companies or people who want to get into the C-suite or basically the leadership side of security. So we are helping them go through the exam prep. So it's an exam prep tool in a way, right? So there's a lot of questions that we offer you, and then you can do it in a exam setting, or you could do it in a separate like module setting, and then you're practicing hard to like get to a point where you're comfortable, you're doing a good job, then you can go give the actual exam. So we are contributing in that one way. We are collaborating with educators. So Ben Maliso, one of our partners, with whom we actually created the Wanna Practice, like that's a separate website through our collaboration. So what we are trying to do is kind of work with educators, right? And by the way, they have their students are all across the globe. So for him especially, he knows a lot of people in Delhi and a lot of other areas. So like basically, because it's a global program, he's able to teach everyone all across the globe. But that's one way, right? So one thing is even right out the gate, or even within the institutions, and I want to work with Andhra University wherever possible to help shape, like by the last year, if they have some certifications like CEH, right? So this one is for penetration testing. So if people get their certifications right as you're graduating, now you're employable right away. So, and again, it's about, I think some of these are initiatives we could make it part of the education kind of programs, but also I believe there are a lot of entry level certifications that people can do to get into the space, and then navigate through and figure out where they want to be, because it's a pretty vast kind of topics, the set of topics that are existing. So yeah, that is how we would go about it, I guess. Yeah. Ravi sir has a question, I think. Oh, I see. Oh,
No, just going around.
sure, sure.
I was thinking of what is talking based on
Yes.
Alok's
Yeah.
question. I was, two things I've done in the last 1 hour because I was running around, right? One is we're thinking of the Center of Excellence for Cybersecurity in the campus.
Perfect. Okay.
We'd like to talk how we set it up.
Absolutely.
Sure. And two is I talked to the head of the GDP
I see.
for CID,
Oh,
for
okay.
state of AP.
I see. I see.
And that's there's a person of yours speaking, James.
Got it.
That's his cousin,
Oh, I see.
and he needs help with respect to. He was in cybersecurity in the
I see.
police
I see.
department.
Got
They
it.
really don't know what's the head and tail of what's happening.
Sure.
You go and you report phishing, and they only do something related to some sort of. They can't do anything technical.
Okay. Okay. Got it.
So he wants to talk and see if Andhra University can help them
Right.
set up this center
Got it.
and also have some sort of a command center for cyber security, and then run these things out of. They have their own command center.
Sure.
I
Sure.
was 1 week back. There was a meeting trying to what should be done on the cyber security. It was not a phishing attack like you're talking about.
Correct. Correct.
Going around and looking at it, there were about 5 people who were online. There was one of them. So it was.
I see.
So they have no clue of what's happening and
Right.
how to
Right.
at least do some awareness stuff. The
Correct.
department guys, even the police,
Yes. Yes.
do not know if you tell them it's a phishing attack,
What should
phishing
be?
for
Yeah.
them is only. So yeah, actually probably that's
Yeah.
the F they only know the
That-
phishing with the F, not the PH.
It's an analogy. That's
Yeah,
what
so
they're
it's
trying to do.
another-
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
actually phishing, and then you might
Yeah,
have to
Correct. 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 Correct.
pray, right? So these are two things that in the last 1 hour,
Hmm.
we're just trying to say that there's a lot of opportunity. I know that people
Yes.
now started identifying that this is a big scale, big thing to
Yeah.
talk of. But of
Absolutely.
course, the CID, the DIG or something, I don't know.
Mhm.
I'll take you to him
Yeah. Yeah.
now.
Definitely. Yeah.
But they're talking about the reason they could not set it up is because of the cost of the tools.
Oh,
So
yeah.
he's asking, is there anything that can circumvent that? Is there something?
Absolutely.
Maybe the physical infrastructure and all that can be provided, but the biggest thing that is constraining them to set up this stuff is the
Cost.
technical, the tools
Sure.
and
Sure.
tools usage, training, and all that stuff. How can they be helped with that? Was the question. So
Absolutely.
I know there could be an answer, there might not be an answer, but something.
I could definitely speak to that a little bit, right? So when I entered the space, when I was starting out, there was no particular solution. It's more of it's always a consulting kind of an environment when you want to do any kind of compliance. So if you want to do SOC compliance, SOC 1, SOC 2, or uh, let's say very common like GDPR or things like that, especially in US, you're running a program. Then you have an outsider, usually an auditor or maybe someone else, who's kind of trying to interpret how things should be done. But those things are all pretty standard, and there can be some of this can be automated and all that, right? So what I realized was it becomes a very expensive endeavor when if it is a very consulting kind of thing, right? But then if you move away from that, if you go to tools like Prisma and all of that, they also offer something very similar, but their cost is around 40, 60, 80K per year. which is very cost prohibitive for someone in India, right? Yeah. So when I started, one of the things you will see, most of the sites will never reveal their price. We reveal our price. We tell you each area, like each tier, how much you're paying, and we kept it low because we wanted startups and smaller companies to be able to afford it. Because a lot of times, even if they got their in their mind that they want to do something, they see the price and they say, you know what, maybe later, and we definitely don't want to be like, what I wanted to do was like keep our costs low, right, of our company, and automate as much as we can, so we bring that value to the end user. So that was one of the things. Again, for the university and as our partnership, like we did sign an MOU yesterday, thanks to Mr. Ravi Tarak here. So uh, we are happy to help out. We definitely want to work with the COE or DIG, whoever who can. We'll definitely establish some processes. Again, I'm not saying we know everything, but I know people who know, and the things that we are good at, we'll bring that to the table. Definitely, our tools give you the certain visibility. We can definitely bring that to the table as well, in terms of like them using, and at least rather than having nothing, they have something. They can start from there, and then we can always recommend other tools or things that they can adopt, which could be the right fit for them. So
I know this is more from the process perspective, right?
product as well. So we do have a Csobot AI product.
Oh, that's the
So
product.
actually, I'll show you the. So this, let's say for example here, right? So here we have, you can manage, these are all those topics with taxonomy we built actually, and we automated it so that you can manage them through the interface. And we have technology discovery. So we actually can discover the technology you have been using for the website over the past, usually for a year or so or more. We can discover that. So we want to again bring up and make it visible for you, not just because the hackers have all these tools. They're figuring it out. We want the same level of information available to you first, and then from there again set up the strategy to do more things. And yeah, that's kind of how we are operating. So it's a tool press process, but we start with the tool, and again this is where we bring our expertise, and again others virtual CISOs that are in our network, we bring in their expertise as well, and they can help out. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, thank you for that. Any question? I think he had.
As Tarak had just mentioned, so how do startups go about making sure that they can take the bare minimum precautions to, and what kind of, where do they get started, or where can they get started? Can you give, I know you can't give entire symposium on this, but
Sure. That's a great question, and that's exactly kind of what I was talking about in terms of we help you monitor your infrastructure and understand your attack surfaces, which is anything that's public from you, right? You might not know that you have, let's say, a public database. You might have done it because it's easy to get you started, and like you want to code, you want to just get your web page done. It's connecting to a database which is public. That's you see that very commonly. That happens a lot. But then you start growing and you just forget about that thing that's there. A tool, using a tool like ours. I mean, I'm biased because I wanted to use my tool, but getting the visibility right. So it doesn't cost you a lot. So as a startup, you don't want to spend a lot of money, but it gives you information over a period of time. So what we do is we scan, let's say for a pro tier every 12 hours, and we keep sending you a report of what has changed. So what has gone from compliant to out of compliance. We give you that information all the time. So now you can keep up with things. So let's say you didn't know that, so let's say having a deployment that might have changed something on your environment, and we give you all our info in one shot through an email. So you can actually go in and see what's happening in that account, so in that cloud account. So yeah, I mean, in terms of it's more about the culture. That's why I'm here really. In AHub, I'm saying I'm providing our services for free because I want to foster a culture of cybersecurity thinking. especially in startups and incubators, right? Because I don't want, I want them to at least think about it at some point, right? If there's a question, somebody should be able to answer that. They should not have to Google everything, because they'll just get generic answers in some tools or whatever. And that's why we actually have a liaison going to be sitting here in AHub, helping whoever has any questions and queries. That's kind of how we're helping. We want to help out. So we believe in, that's the initial part, is education, and if possible, adoption of some tool that's going to keep you safe to some extent. And we also advocate uses of things like Cloudflare, right? If you have a domain, you better secure it. It's very simple. But if you use Cloudflare, it's going to be easy. But a lot of people don't know about it. By the way, they don't pay me anything, but I will always advocate for things that I'm passionate and I like, because we use it as well, and we believe that it has a very, very good benefit even on the free tier. It gives you a lot of benefits. So I would always recommend our companies, if they the clients we work with, if they don't have it, we first do that, then we go to the next things, because again, it's a step-by-step process. It's a education, it's understanding where you need to start. And I believe, again, that's part of the thing that we are trying to do, really. So yeah. Yes, we do. So I mean, regular in the sense, a technical person, right? So because let's say if you run a report, we have a link to a knowledge base. It gives you step-by-step instructions on how to resolve that problem. So we do that because again, we believe, even if you don't have a SecOps team, which is typically, they are more tuned to it, they understand more of the problems, and they can go deeper and faster on it. But if you don't have it, you should not have to be handicapped, right? We actually provide you the link to a knowledge base where we illustrate everything step by step. We have screenshots as well, so you can actually go through the steps, and then you can make that work. So yeah, we help that there. Okay, thank you. I can keep talking if you want, but I should do it. Yeah, that's.
Thank you for sharing us the abundance of knowledge, sir.